Hello. I thought you might like to see how I work with my to-go kits when I'm travelling outside on my bicycle. This is a sketchbook that I've been keeping during lockdown. So there are a few very quick sketches snatched here as I travel around. There's one of my bicycle, and I just spend a few minutes at most sitting either on the bicycle or stopping along the way to make a quick sketch. I like these moments where I just capture something in time, and in fact this morning I was waiting in the queue at Sainsbury's. They were stocking the shelves, so here's a drawing of people waiting in the queue. So I don't really waste a minute, but on the route there's this beautiful bluebell wood, and I spent about 5 or 6 minutes a couple of days ago sketching the wood. I will post more images of that later. So that's what I take with me, and I have this tiny little kit here, you can see it. And I'm now back in my studio, and I think this is done on cartridge paper, which is a reasonable quality one. I think that might well be, yeah, that's a sea whites. And here I have some 160 gram scrap of watercolour paper. I've lost the title, but I think it is an old piece of Bartram green paper, which I'm using here. And I've put a few things aside. This is my secondary drawing kit. I'll grab one or the other when I go out. I've always got one on the go. And a couple of other things I have to hand when I'm just doing things is this little brush, which is useful when travelling because it folds away. And obviously some tiny brushes here. There was a big tree creating shadows, so I'm trying to remember as much as I can. I have photographs. I haven't shown you the photographs, I'll show them at the end, but I tend not to work from the photographs, so I'll have them as a reference if I need them. So all I'm doing is blocking out some shapes because I want to think about how that blue, purple blue, came through the shadows of the woods. And when you've waited in the queue and drawing, it's quite interesting. People wonder what you're doing, but sitting quietly in the woods, I'm left alone. But it's just my way of capturing two aspects of that time of being outside during lockdown, the necessary time of having to shop, you know, and believe me, I need to practice my life drawing, so that's quite useful. And then also thinking about those few moments I can just get back into the landscape, which is really important to me. And you know, they're falling along that ream of what we miss and what we value. So you can see here, if I bring it closer, hopefully you can see that there's just a very simple pencil drawing. So back down again. So I'm going to imitate how I did this outside with regard to the materials I used. So I actually went out with a few coloured water-soluble pencils. These ones are a Derwent, but whatever you have to hand. And sometimes young children's felt pens work quite well. They will run as well. But you know, improvise, interpret with what media you have. Some people might prefer to do this with watercolour, and I might even add watercolour on at this stage. Who knows where it's going to lead. So I'm just going to lay down some of that pencil, and I'll stop briefly so you can see it kind of step by step. So there we go. I'm just putting some tones down of green. Again, it is about an interpretation. It's different to being outside. I would obviously prefer to be outside to draw this, but time doesn't allow me to do that, and I wouldn't be able to set up like I am here to show you. But start to see how that green, when it goes on, is giving me some points of reference. Let's put some in between the tree line, because I remembered that from the distance, just that dark green. And look, I've made a mistake there. I've gone straight over where a tree is, but you know, there could be two. Let's put a little gap there. Mistakes are fine. There we go. Now we'll go back to some brown. There we go. And I'm going to try to get this done in 10 minutes, but if I'm keeping an eye on the time, if not, I will do another little 5-minute finish, because I might well need to let it dry. There we go. And purple. And again, I'm going to just rummage through, because I've got I have got the blue there. So I'm just going to lay some of that in just to block in where I think. Notice I'm not trying at this stage to draw bluebells. That might come later. I just want to get the impression, because this wood, it's not far from where I live in Maidstone. I'm not going to say exactly where it is, because I don't want people rushing out. No, I've done it again, not concentrating, not talking to you. So let's just go back over. That's part of the tree trunk, so I'm going to go back over that bit. There we go. See how that now gives me a secondary tone. Art is about making mistakes. It's just knowing which are the best ones to keep when you're working with them, actually. You know, it's that kind of impressionistic view. So I'll just come back in with some purple. Any student who've attended any of my courses will know that I'm reasonably clear about what I'm doing, but I do get tongue twisted, and probably that's quite a good thing at times, because the brain works quite differently, different parts of the brain, and this isn't something you would normally, you know, I'd be more reflective when I'm working independently, not trying to explain as I work. It sits in a different part of your brain. And I think it should, because that's about how things develop. So it's not actually looking so much like anything at the moment. And I've picked up just a standard pencil there. I'm going to just bring a little bit more in. And we'll just see where this goes, shall we? Because sometimes if you're outside, it's not practical to take a full painting set. But it's capturing that freshness of being outside. Coming back over again, and I do have a little tiny watercolour set that I will share with you. I'm going to rummage around for some kind of green yellow at the moment. There we go. That will do. Let's put some of that yellow in. I'll probably run out of the lead. I'm going to come back in with some purple soon. So there was a block of purple here. Remember, this is an impression of the wood. It's not supposed to be slavishly copied. And what I remember is the freshness of those bluebells. So let's just start to bring out some of those. And I might, you know, put some more detail in later, but let's see where we go. So, I'm just going to try a little bit of watercolour. I just want to see how those colours blend. I just want to see how those colours move, and this could well be the first stage. I would maybe let that dry and then go over with more detail. But see how that watercolour pencil shifts as you work. And the practical thing about watercolour, I often, when I'm working in museums or elsewhere, is I can take a watercolour pencil and put down some colour that I see that I particularly like, and then add the water when I get home, because quite often in some places you're not really meant to take wet media. So this is a useful tip, you know. Think about soluble pencils when you have to work quite quickly. Once you get home, you're back to your own space. You can do all kinds of things using. Just another little tip, I have a water pot here. This is actually a salt and pepper thing I found in a junk shop, which I rather like. And I have one dirty and one clean water, so I can clean my brushes as I go. So let's go. So I'm just trying to keep this as quick as I can. And this would probably need to dry. Now it depends on how precious you are with your water soluble stuff. I've got some coloured paints here, and often what's useful is I might just try that on the edge. So I'll just see if I've got a bright purple in here. It's a turquoise. that will do. So let's bring out that blue. Just mixing up. Okay, that will do. There we go, just some of that shadowing going in with sort of a grey blue with some watercolour paint, and I'm going to take that over the tree as well. You can see how that's moving on that page. Pick up a little bit more. Again, this is just this tiny set as well I've got here, but I carry that as well with me. So let's just see how I can drag some colour down. There we go. I have a feeling this paper might be a little bit old. It's not. It's okay. It's moving around fine, but paper does age. There we go. And it doesn't. Often when it ages, it doesn't spread so nicely. And I'm going to go straight back in here now with pencil. Look at that. If you're precious about your pencils, I tend not to be, you know, they're there to be used. You may not want to work straight wet into wet, but this I don't mind doing, you know, they're not overly expensive, this little set, and I just like the way it gives me a different shape to work with. There we go. And coming back in with some brown and grey. Green and grey, there we go. And I'm going to come back in with a solid block of a dark colour now, I think. Try not to use black, because I'm not very fond of black in my work, so just on that tree. There we go. See how that gives me some of the shadowing now. I'm just working with some straight out of this palette. There we go. So I'm mixing some of these intense watercolours. These are Koh-i-Noor with ordinary palette watercolours. A bit of shadowing there. And back in with that purple. So, and there I can start to bring in the suggestion of some individual heads, just the movement. So that's probably the first stage. I will do another session just to show you if I need to let that dry, but I might make some adjustments to that. I think when I'm working with paint and mixed media, I like to experiment with a mixture of watercolour pencil and watercolour. Occasionally I'll use ink, and you've seen that. It's about losing the fear, just having a go. So thank you for joining me.